Ladies and gentlemen, today, let's have an honest, straightforward conversation. You see, in life, it's easy to talk about intelligence, success, and empowerment. But sometimes we avoid the uncomfortable truths, the behaviors that drag a woman down, strip her of her dignity, and make her look foolish, not only in the eyes of others, but often without her even realizing it. Now, I'm not talking about academic degrees or how many books someone reads. Intelligence is more than that. It's reflected in your decisions, your self-respect, and your ability to navigate life. But when certain patterns show up repeatedly, it doesn't matter how beautiful, talented, or educated someone is. Those patterns will make her look unwise, unguarded, and yes, even foolish. First, let's talk about one of the most glaring signs: constantly chasing validation. A woman who cannot breathe without someone else's approval will always find herself running in circles, exhausted and empty. She'll change herself to fit in, lower her standards to feel accepted, and eventually lose her own identity. Wisdom begins when you understand that self-worth comes from within, not from applause or attention. Then there's the inability to learn from mistakes. We all stumble. Life is full of lessons. But when a woman keeps repeating the same toxic cycles, choosing the wrong people, ignoring red flags, making impulsive decisions, and refuses to pause, reflect, and grow, she's not living wisely. Repeating patterns without evolving is like walking through life with blinders on. Another sign is disrespecting herself in the name of love. A foolish woman will tolerate disrespect, betrayal, and manipulation, all while convincing herself it's loyalty. She confuses suffering with strength, believing that enduring chaos is somehow proof of her worth. But the truth is, the strongest women are those who draw boundaries, not those who sacrifice themselves for someone who doesn't value them. Let's also not ignore the tendency to gossip and tear others down. A woman who spends her energy spreading rumors, judging others, or finding satisfaction in someone else's downfall only exposes her own insecurity. Intelligent women uplift. Foolish ones waste time in negativity, not realizing they reveal more about themselves than the person they criticize. Now, there's a dangerous habit of ignoring personal growth. A woman who believes she knows everything, who refuses to learn, evolve, or expand her mind, stunts her own potential. She becomes stagnant, clinging to outdated mindsets, avoiding accountability, and resisting change. Growth is uncomfortable, but ignorance is far worse. And finally, clinging to fantasy over reality. When a woman builds her life around unrealistic expectations, whether it's relationships, career shortcuts, or overnight success, she sets herself up for constant disappointment. Dreams are beautiful, but without grounded action, they remain illusions, and illusions crumble. So let me be clear. These behaviors don't define a person permanently. People can change, but recognizing them is the first step to rising above them. The world needs strong, self-aware, intelligent women. The question is, are you willing to face these patterns, or will you stay blind to them? The choice is yours. A woman who constantly chases validation from others unknowingly traps herself in an exhausting cycle that diminishes her confidence and sense of identity. This behavior often stems from deep-rooted insecurities, societal pressure, or unresolved emotional wounds. She feels the need to be seen, heard, and approved of by others at all times. Whether it's through her appearance, achievements, relationships, or social status, everything becomes about impressing people rather than fulfilling herself. The dangerous part is that she may not even realize how much of her energy is spent on seeking approval from the outside world. When a woman falls into this pattern, she starts tailoring her personality to fit into what she believes others expect of her. She may change her style, opinions, values, or even ambitions, all in the name of being liked or accepted. The constant need for validation clouds her judgment, making it difficult for her to stand firm in her beliefs or decisions. Instead of standing confidently in her uniqueness, she molds herself into what she believes society, friends, family, or even romantic partners want her to be. Social media plays a significant role in fueling this mindset. A woman obsessed with likes, comments, or followers is continuously feeding her worth through external reactions. She feels beautiful only when people compliment her. She feels important only when people notice her achievements. But the moment the attention fades, so does her self-esteem. It becomes a dangerous roller coaster where her confidence rises and falls based on others' opinions, creating emotional instability and dissatisfaction. In relationships, this behavior often manifests as overcompensation and desperation. She may tolerate disrespect, betray her own boundaries, or stay silent when mistreated, all for the sake of keeping someone's approval. She fears rejection so much that she sacrifices her peace, self-respect, and even her dreams just to be seen as worthy in someone else's eyes. Ironically, the more she chases validation, the less valuable she appears. People start to sense the desperation, and rather than gaining respect, she loses it. What's even more concerning is that constantly needing validation weakens her inner voice. She becomes disconnected from her own instincts and desires, leading to confusion and frustration. Simple decisions become overwhelming because she fears making a choice that others won't approve of. Over time, this erodes her self, trust, and confidence, making her heavily dependent on external opinions for every aspect of her life. This behavior doesn't just affect her relationships or self-image. It bleeds into her career, friendships, and overall happiness. She may avoid opportunities that challenge her or keep her opinions to herself in group settings, afraid that standing out might lead to rejection. Her potential stays hidden beneath the surface because she's too busy performing for others instead of showing up authentically. At its core, the constant chase for validation keeps a woman stuck in a loop where her happiness, confidence, and sense of purpose are always in someone else's hands. And as long as she looks outward for approval, she'll never truly own her power or recognize her worth. One of the clearest signs of a foolish woman is her inability to learn from her mistakes. Life presents every person with challenges, setbacks, and painful lessons. A wise woman uses those moments as stepping stones for growth, reflection, and transformation. But when a woman repeatedly makes the same poor choices without adjusting her behavior or mindset, she traps herself in a destructive cycle that prevents her from evolving. It's not the mistake itself that defines her intelligence. It's her unwillingness to change course or recognize where she went wrong. A woman who ignores her past mistakes often lives on autopilot, blaming circumstances, other people, or bad luck for the outcomes in her life. Instead of looking inward and questioning her patterns, she falls into denial. This refusal to take accountability leads to repeating the same unhealthy relationships, toxic friendships, or poor financial decisions over and over again. It's as if she's stuck in a loop where history keeps replaying itself, but she refuses to see the common denominator herself. In relationships, this behavior is painfully obvious. She might continuously choose partners who mistreat her, betray her, or disrespect her boundaries. Despite experiencing heartbreak after heartbreak, she tells herself that this time it will be different, without making any real effort to set higher standards or protect her peace. She ignores the red flags, overlooks the warning signs, and convinces herself that she can change the outcome simply by hoping for better. But hope without wisdom is a setup for disappointment. The same pattern extends to friendships, career choices, and personal habits. She might surround herself with people who drain her energy, betray her trust, or use her kindness. Yet she continues to entertain them, believing things will somehow change without her making different decisions. She might sabotage her career by repeating bad habits like procrastination, poor time management, or lack of preparation, yet blames the system or other people for her lack of progress. The inability to learn from mistakes also reveals itself in her emotional reactions. Instead of developing emotional intelligence and learning to respond with grace, she might lash out, play the victim, or shut down completely every time she faces criticism or failure. She becomes so defensive and closed off to feedback that she robs herself of the opportunity to grow. In her mind, she's always right, and the world is always against her. This mindset not only stunts her personal development, but also damages her relationships and reputation. A woman who refuses to learn from her past keeps herself trapped in cycles that erode her confidence and happiness. She becomes frustrated with life, but unwilling to change the behaviors or beliefs that keep producing the same painful results. In doing so, she becomes a prisoner of her own stubbornness and emotional immaturity. While others move forward, adapt, and elevate, she stays stuck, blaming everyone but herself for why life feels so hard and unfulfilling. Tolerating disrespect in the name of love is one of the most damaging patterns a woman can fall into. Yet it remains common among those who confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. A woman who allows herself to be mistreated, humiliated, or emotionally neglected under the illusion that it's a form of strength or dedication is only setting herself up for deeper wounds. She convinces herself that enduring pain is a sign of patience, that accepting lies or betrayal is an act of understanding, and that lowering her standards is what love requires. But true love never demands the abandonment of self-respect. When a woman tolerates disrespect, it doesn't happen overnight. It begins subtly with small compromises, excuses for bad behavior, and ignoring red flags. At first, she might dismiss the cruel words, the broken promises, or the moments where her worth is questioned. She tells herself that he's just stressed, confused, or dealing with personal issues. Over time, those excuses become habits, and the boundary between love and self-destruction completely disappears. The dangerous part is how society often romanticizes this type of suffering. People praise women who stick by their man no matter what, turning toxic endurance into a badge of honor. But behind closed doors, these women often feel drained, emotionally shattered, and stripped of their confidence. The more she accepts disrespect, the more her self-esteem erodes, making it even harder to leave or demand better. A woman stuck in this pattern may start questioning her own worth, believing that mistreatment is all she deserves. She internalizes the disrespect, thinking, maybe I'm not enough, or if I just love him harder, he'll change. This mindset keeps her trapped in a vicious cycle where love is no longer about mutual respect, but about constantly proving herself, fixing someone, or enduring suffering in silence. The ripple effect of tolerating disrespect extends far beyond the relationship itself. Her mental health suffers, often leading to anxiety, depression, or chronic self-doubt. Her friendships and family relationships may deteriorate because she's too ashamed to admit the truth or too isolated by a partner who controls her. Her ambitions, dreams, and passions take a backseat as she devotes all her energy to maintaining a relationship that slowly destroys her. Moreover, a woman who accepts disrespect teaches others how to treat her. Friends, family, colleagues, even strangers begin to sense that she doesn't value herself, and they may exploit that vulnerability. Without realizing it, she sends a message to the world that her standards are low and her boundaries can be crossed. This behavior is not about love, it's about fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of facing reality. But in trying to avoid loneliness or heartbreak, she unknowingly chooses a life filled with silent suffering and broken dignity. Love should empower, uplift, and inspire, not diminish, belittle, or humiliate. Yet, when a woman sacrifices her self-respect for the sake of keeping someone in her life, she gives away her power and loses herself completely in the process. A woman who invests her energy in gossiping and tearing others down reveals more about her own insecurities than anything else. This behavior might seem harmless on the surface idle conversations, judgmental remarks, or backhanded comments disguised as jokes, but at its core, it reflects a deep lack of confidence and self-awareness. When a woman feels unfulfilled, inadequate, or unnoticed, she often looks for ways to diminish others to feel superior, even if temporarily. Instead of working on herself, she finds satisfaction in picking apart the flaws, failures, or appearances of those around her. This toxic habit is often fueled by comparison. A woman who constantly measures her worth against others feels threatened by someone else's success, beauty, or achievements. Rather than using that energy to improve herself, she tries to bring others down to her level. She becomes the person who criticizes someone's appearance behind their back, mocks another woman's choices, or spreads rumors simply to tarnish reputations. In doing so, she believes she's elevating herself, but in reality, she's only exposing her bitterness and insecurity to the world. Gossip might feel empowering in the moment, especially when it's shared among like-minded individuals who engage in the same negativity. There's a temporary rush of superiority, a feeling of being in the know or part of a group. But the aftermath is always the same. Relationships built on gossip lack trust, respect, and authenticity. Eventually, the same people who gossip with her will gossip about her. It's a vicious cycle that breeds toxicity and weakens her connections with others. Beyond damaging relationships, this behavior also stunts personal growth. A woman who spends her time criticizing others rarely invests that time in improving herself. She wastes energy focusing on flaws, drama, and negativity, leaving little room for self-reflection, learning, or building her own success. While the women she talks about are busy pursuing goals, nurturing their confidence, and growing, she remains stagnant, consumed by jealousy and resentment. What's worse is how this behavior tarnishes her reputation. People begin to see her as untrustworthy, petty, and bitter. They may smile to her face, but they'll never truly respect or confide in her. Over time, she isolates herself, not because others exclude her, but because her negativity makes her presence draining and unwelcome. Her words become a reflection of her character, and people start associating her with drama, toxicity, and unreliability. This pattern often stems from unresolved wounds, perhaps rejection, failure, or low self-esteem. But instead of healing those wounds, she projects her pain onto others. She believes tearing someone down will ease her own discomfort, yet it only deepens her feelings of inadequacy. No woman builds a fulfilling life by standing on the ruins of another's reputation. Genuine confidence comes from self-awareness, personal growth, and celebrating others' success, not from spreading negativity. A woman consumed by gossip and criticism keeps herself locked in a small, bitter world where comparison and insecurity thrive. While she wastes time belittling others, she forfeits the opportunity to build her own greatness. A woman who resists personal growth and avoids accountability limits herself more than any external force ever could. Growth requires self-awareness, humility, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. But when a woman believes she already knows everything or refuses to admit when she's wrong, she closes the door to transformation. This type of mindset keeps her stuck in outdated habits, toxic patterns, and shallow thinking, all while life moves forward without her. Refusing to grow is often rooted in fear and ego. It's easier to cling to familiar beliefs, even if they're flawed, than to challenge oneself and evolve. Some women convince themselves that their way of thinking is the only valid way, dismissing feedback, constructive criticism, or new ideas. They become defensive when corrected, take offense at suggestions, and view every challenge as a personal attack rather than an opportunity for improvement. Over time, this resistance hardens into stubbornness, making them emotionally rigid and mentally stagnant. A woman who refuses accountability often plays the blame game. She deflects responsibility for her mistakes onto others, her partner, friends, co-workers, or even circumstances. Nothing is ever her fault in her eyes. She will twist stories, justify poor decisions, and rewrite events to protect her ego. But by doing so, she stunts her emotional maturity. Owning up to mistakes is not a sign of weakness. It's a necessary step for growth. But when pride takes over, she remains stuck in the same place, repeating old behaviors and facing the same consequences over and over. In relationships, this resistance to growth manifests as emotional immaturity. She may avoid difficult conversations, deny her role in conflicts, or refuse to work on herself to become a better partner. Instead, she might blame her failed relationships entirely on others, never pausing to reflect on how her actions, mindset, or expectations contribute to the issues. This leaves her cycling through the same relationship patterns, never breaking free because she refuses to change herself. The impact extends to her professional life as well. A woman unwilling to grow may reject learning new skills, resist adapting to change, or avoid stepping out of her comfort zone. She stays stuck in the same job, with the same frustrations, never realizing that her refusal to evolve is the very reason she feels unfulfilled or left behind. Opportunities pass her by, not because she lacks potential, but because she's unwilling to stretch herself. What's often overlooked is how this mindset affects her confidence. True self-esteem is built through growth, through overcoming challenges, and through learning from mistakes. But when a woman resists growth, she secretly feels insecure, knowing deep down that she's capable of more but unwilling to do the work. That inner conflict breeds frustration, jealousy, and resentment toward those who are evolving. In the end, a refusal to grow is sabotage disguised as pride or self-righteousness. The world never stops evolving, and neither should the people in it. A woman who holds on to old ways, resists accountability, and refuses to expand her thinking only limits herself, no matter how much she tries to blame the world for her dissatisfaction. Growth is uncomfortable, but staying stagnant is far more painful in the long run. Living in fantasy over reality is one of the most deceptive and harmful habits a woman can fall into. It starts small, dreams, hopes, and a desire for a better life. But when fantasy replaces grounded action, it leads to disappointment, heartbreak, and stagnation. A woman caught in fantasy convinces herself that life should unfold effortlessly, that love will be perfect, that success will fall into her lap without discipline, and that people will change simply because she wishes they would. Over time, these illusions distance her from the truth, blinding her to the real work and choices required to build a meaningful life. One of the most common examples of this is found in relationships. A woman who lives in fantasy ignores obvious red flags, clinging to potential rather than reality. She might fall in love with someone's words instead of their consistent actions, holding onto the belief that they will transform into the ideal partner she imagines in her mind. Despite clear patterns of disrespect, inconsistency, or betrayal, she convinces herself that love, patience, or loyalty will magically fix everything. But relationships rooted in illusion eventually crumble, often leaving her feeling betrayed, not by the other person, but by her own unrealistic expectations. The same behavior appears in her personal aspirations. A woman who lives in fantasy dreams big but fails to put in the hard, often unglamorous work required to turn dreams into reality. She visualizes success, wealth, or recognition, but avoids discipline, consistency, and accountability. She may scroll through social media, idolizing influencers, celebrities, or entrepreneurs, convincing herself that success comes overnight or through shortcuts. But when progress doesn't appear as quickly as her fantasy promised, she becomes discouraged, bitter, or envious of others who have put in years of effort to achieve their goals. Fantasy also distorts her self-perception. She might convince herself that she's doing more than she actually is, overestimating her efforts while underestimating the discipline real progress demands. This disconnect creates frustration because her reality doesn't match the image she holds in her mind. She feels stuck, but instead of adjusting her mindset or daily habits, she retreats deeper into fantasy, finding comfort in illusions rather than facing the discomfort of growth. This pattern extends to friendships, family dynamics, and even health. A woman lost in fantasy may believe relationships should always be easy, that people should automatically meet her expectations, or that things will just work themselves out without communication or effort. She might neglect her well-being, assuming she can fix bad habits later, only to find herself struggling with preventable problems down the line. The truth is, fantasy without action breeds disappointment. While dreaming is powerful, it becomes dangerous when it replaces self-awareness, realistic thinking, and hard work. A woman who confuses fantasy for reality remains stuck in cycles of frustration, always chasing an illusion while her actual life slips by unnoticed. It takes courage to trade fantasy for the sometimes harsh, often challenging, but always rewarding path of reality. Only then can she build the life she truly desires, brick by brick, based on truth rather than illusion.